Dear friends in Marriage Encounter in England and Wales, we are Anne and Bernie Tierney. We wish to share with you some thoughts about how our attitude and approach to risks can affect our relationship as a couple. We begin with a short reading from St. Luke's Gospel.
And indeed, which of you here, intending to build a tower, would not first sit down and work out the cost to see if he had enough to complete it? Otherwise, if he laid the foundation and then found himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers would all start making fun of him, saying, "Here is a man who started to build and was unable to finish." Or again, what king marching to war against another king would not first sit down and consider whether with 10,000 men he could stand up to the other who advanced against him with 20,000? If not, then while the other king was still a long way off, he would send envoys to sue for peace. So, in the same way, none of you can be my disciple unless he gives up all his possessions.
In this passage, Jesus speaks about assessing the cost of becoming his disciple, so as not to undertake this commitment lightly, with the risk of giving up when encountering unanticipated difficulties. In essence, it tells us to weigh up the risk factors before deciding to embark on a course of action. We take numerous risks every day. When we walk down the stairs, we risk tripping. When we eat our breakfast, we risk choking on our food. When we drive our car, we risk having an accident. Our life is fraught with risks. But fortunately, it is rare that we fall foul of them. One reason is that we have learnt from experience to take care, and our routine provides us with ways to accomplish regular tasks safely. For example, on the stairs, we grip the banister to avoid falling. Our risk avoidance behaviour becomes automatic, and this protects us in the tasks we undertake. It would be impossible to avoid these risks completely, because otherwise we would do nothing, and that would bring its own risks of inactivity, depression, starvation. But by managing well understood risks, we can go about our daily lives in relative safety.
However, when we're faced with an unaccustomed situation, it is difficult for us to identify the new risks we may encounter. The unprecedented coronavirus pandemic is one such situation. We have been through weeks of lockdown, and this has protected many from the risks of catching the virus. Nevertheless, many people have sadly and tragically become seriously ill and died. And we have seen that in lockdown, we cease to function normally, socially and economically, as a society, and as individuals. So this is not a viable long-term approach. As the lockdown starts to be relaxed, we are faced with new choices regarding how to behave in this new context. We ask ourselves, am I among those vulnerable people who should shield themselves? Well, we don't know for certain. Based on current scientific understanding, we can only reason in terms of probability. However, we hear of many cases where people not in the so-called at-risk group have succumbed to the virus.
Next, we wonder, is it safe to go to the supermarket, the garden centre, to send my children to school, to use public transport, take a plane flight? There is no clear answer to questions like these, because as it stands, we cannot be sure. As lockdown eases, people will have more scope to make their own decisions. Some may want to accept a higher level of risk, whereas others will exercise extreme caution. People are different and see things differently. Reflecting on this, we decided to think about our own attitudes towards risk and how this affects our relationship as a couple.
I consider myself a risk-averse person. I am security conscious and cautious, always looking for the potential pitfalls. If I see something on the stairs, I immediately remove it. I tidy up shoes by the door in case someone trips over them. I covered our garden pond with a safety grill. And when leaving the house, I always double check the door is locked. But in other respects, I'm quite happy accepting some risks. For example, I'm quite confident climbing a ladder to trim the garden trees.
I consider myself to have an awareness of risks, but not as much as Bernie. I can see his risk avoidance behaviour as over the top, and I sometimes feel irritated or constrained by them, such as the long, complicated computer passwords he creates. However, with the coronavirus and the fact that my elderly mother has come to live with us during this period, I feel happy about the precautions he suggested we adopt, such as, on our daily walks, keeping as far away as possible from others, arranging for supermarket home deliveries, washing or quarantining anything coming into the house, etc. But in other ways, I feel tense when he accepts risks that I don't. He's quite happy climbing a ladder, but as I see it, if he fell off, however unlikely that might be, the consequences would be very serious indeed. I ask myself, why in some ways is he so risk conscious and in other ways not at all?
Well, I like to be self-sufficient regarding jobs in the house and garden. I believe my way is best. It's difficult for me to relinquish control and let someone else trim the trees, for example. Anne sees the risk of me falling off the ladder, whereas I see the risk of the work not being done to my satisfaction. Rationally, I admit that these two risks are of different magnitudes, but I feel completely confident climbing a ladder. So, although the impact, and literally speaking, of falling off the ladder would be great, I see the likelihood or probability of me falling as very low. However, in view of Anne's concerns and the consequences should I fall off the ladder, I opted for another solution. I purchased a long-reach hedge trimmer. In other words, I opted for a choice that lowers the risk or even removes it, although I must also be careful not to get back strain when using the long-reach hedge trimmer, because sometimes reducing one risk can create another.
We have talked about how adopting a risk management approach enables us to undertake more activities relatively safely, even in a context where risks are present. Because of our different attitudes to the way we approach risk, we decided to dialogue about how we are experiencing the risks in the current coronavirus situation. We wrote to the question, in the current coronavirus pandemic situation, what are my reactions regarding the risks for ourselves and those dear to us? What are my spontaneous thoughts? What are my feelings? How do I see this affecting my behaviour and the choices I make?
I wrote, Dearest Anne, as the news developed about the spread of the coronavirus, I became increasingly alarmed at the implications both for the world and for us and our family. I felt a pull between supporting our family, caring for our preschool grandchildren, and protecting ourselves from a deadly disease, as the information at that time was saying that there was little risk other than to the older population and those with underlying health conditions. I wanted to talk to our family about how collectively we should address this. In March at church, progressive measures were put in place to keep a safe distance and avoid contact. And by mid-March, it became clear to all the family that isolating measures were necessary. I felt relieved and thankful at arriving jointly as a family at this conclusion. We arranged for your elderly mother to live with us, as your sister, who lives close to her, is a nurse and was reassigned to caring for COVID patients in the hospital. Since the 23rd of March, we have been self-isolating, and I feel safe from the virus. Even so, I find it difficult to assess the risks. So little is known about this virus. So in the absence of clear, precise information, my natural approach is to err on the side of caution. The strict risk avoidance measures we have adopted may be over the top, but I feel safer. With restrictions being eased, there may be an expectation for us to mix more, and this leaves me feeling uneasy. When I hear that even fit and healthy young people can succumb to the virus, I believe we must keep our guard up until treatments become available. I miss the family, and I feel sad at being unable to be with them, unable to offer practical support with the grandchildren. Love from Bernie.
Dearest Bernie, I feel grateful for all that you're doing to protect Mum and us from exposure to the virus. At nearly 92 years old, Mum is very vulnerable. Going for a daily walk is important to our health and well-being, but at first I felt very tense if I saw people approaching or passing too close to us. Now I've got used to it, I feel less tense, and I have enjoyed chatting across the road to people we know. However, I wonder what is the true risk we face. Are we overreacting? Is there anything we're doing? Is everything we're doing over the top? It seems so different to our normal behaviour. In addition to the practical implications, the crisis also affects me emotionally. We haven't been able to be with our family and grandchildren when we have been so used to getting together regularly. We've missed celebrating family birthdays together. The little grandchildren love singing happy birthday and blowing out the candles. How can they possibly understand why they can no longer do this, no longer be together and hug each other or see their cousins and grandparents? I worry about how my sister is coping, caring for the COVID patients and living alone in isolation. I feel uncertain and uneasy about the time when restrictions will be progressively eased, as I don't see any of the health risks diminishing in the near future. I feel unsure and fearful about how to react to this changing situation. When will I feel able to go back to our previous way of life, or the new normal, whatever that turns out to be? All my love, Anne.
So we now invite you to write your dialogue, exploring your thoughts and feelings with regard to how you see the risks in your current situation of the coronavirus pandemic. Writing to the same question: in the current coronavirus pandemic situation, what are my reactions regarding the risks for ourselves and those dear to us? What are my spontaneous thoughts? What are my feelings? How do I see this affecting my behaviour and the choices I make?
We have focused today on risks, and these can leave us feeling fearful and uncertain. However, we do try to see opportunities amid the difficulties, maintaining a positive attitude and recognising the positive aspects. We are extremely thankful for the technology that enables contacts such as Zoom meetings and WhatsApp messages. It has been great fun recording videos, reading stories for the grandchildren, and developing new skills as puppeteers and ventriloquists. And there is time to be together, time at last to do some of those things we had been wanting to do but never found the time before. And underpinning all this is our trust in God. So we close by inviting you to join in praying for all those who are suffering physically, mentally, and emotionally at the present time. May the Holy Spirit give courage and comfort, and a renewal of community spirit in society, thanks to those giving selflessly in response to an awareness of others' needs. We pray too for the development of a vaccine and effective treatments. Amen.
Amen.